The Iowa men's basketball season is officially upon us. An exhibition game Monday, and then a week from Monday, Iowa's first regular season game on November the 7th. A special edition of this show, Iowa head coach Fran McCaffery joining the show to help us preview the season ahead, plus my top 5 storylines heading into another year of Iowa men's basketball. All that coming up during week 205 of Brada's Branded Thoughts. This is from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Welcome to Iowa Floor Covering, a locally owned flooring store in Bondurant, Iowa that specializes in do-it-yourself projects. If you're a contractor or a DIYer, Iowa Floor Covering has your back. Right now at Iowa Floor Covering, get tough core click-together 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring for $269 per foot when you install it yourself. That's a much better value than you'll find at any of the big box stores. Looking for other types of flooring? They can help with that too. Between their exceptional product knowledge and commitment to customer service, the guys at Iowa Floor Covering will provide everything you need to complete your DIY flooring project. So what are you waiting for? Skip the box stores now and visit iowafloorcovering.com/DIY. That's iowafloorcovering.com/DIY. Promotional pricing only available with self-installation. Week 205 of Brada's Branded Thoughts, a special edition of the show as we welcome Iowa head coach Fran McCaffery to the show as we count down the hours till the official return of Iowa men's basketball. Should be a great year. Iowa with an opportunity, some motivation certainly after last season's disappointing end, but yet coming off a Big Ten tournament championship. Lots to build on. We see what Keegan Murray is doing already with the Sacramento Kings in the league. Perhaps his brother is following suit. Before we get to our discussion with Coach McCaffrey, and that's really the main feature of this week's show, I want to give you my top 5 storylines heading into this season. First of all, number 5. Of course, Iowa and the monkey on their back, so to speak, that is the NCAA tournament. Yet another early exit. And I know a lot of fans have been on Fran McCaffery for not being able to win in this tournament. I think that narrative is a bit misguided, or I don't want to say misinformed. Fans are very reactionary and assume that because they haven't made it to the second weekend, that just simply means Fran hasn't won in this tournament. He has won most first-round games that he's competed in as the Iowa head coach. He also won games at Siena in the NCAA tournament. I get it. It's not the same. He's got to do it here. The second round has been a bugaboo. Part of the issue has been simply matchups. One year they played Gonzaga in the second round. Another year they played Villanova, who I think went on to win the national title that year. They had Tennessee on the ropes, took them to overtime. They've been very close. I get it. Close does not cut it. And now, of course, Iowa losing in the first round of Richmond this past year. I think I'm to the point now as well. I'm certainly to the point now where I will admit it's time for Iowa to get to that second weekend. I don't want to say I've excused Fran McCaffery's teams and their struggles to win NCAA tournament games, but I tried to look at the big picture. I think now, though, especially with the fact that they won the Big Ten tournament last year, this is I don't want to say the final hurdle, because you'd love to be competing for Final Fours and NCAA championships, but they got to get to that second weekend. They got to make a Sweet 16. Haven't made a Sweet 16 since 1999. Of course, not all of that. Most of that was not Fran McCaffery. Well, I should say about half of that was Fran. But, of course, you're talking about the Alford era, the Licklider era. Can they get the monkey off their back this year? Matchups are huge in the tournament. One and done. It's not like an NBA series. I think if it was formulated or set up like an NBA series or an NHL series or, whatnot, I think they would probably have gone to the Sweet 16 already. I think they were much better than Richmond. I think they would have beaten Richmond 9 times out of 10, and they didn't the one day. I think they probably would have beaten Tennessee at least 5 times out of 10. And I'll even go back to the 2020 year when they didn't get to play in the tournament. And I think they had, a great team that year, obviously, with Garza and Frederick and Wieskamp. We'll never know, but COVID shut that season down. So we'll see. There's going to be some pressure. I know Fran McCaffery's not handling, I don't think he's viewing this season as pressure because his job's not at stake, nor should it be. But they got to get this monkey off their back. How about number 4? Iowa with some significant coaching changes. Courtney Eldridge promoted to one of Iowa's 3 full-time assistants, and Matt Gatens hired away from Drake, the former Iowa standout, now on the staff as Billy Taylor departs for a head coaching job at Elon. And then, of course, Kirk Spira retiring. So how will those two guys affect Iowa? Is there going to be anything different schematically with defense? I don't know that Eldridge or Gatens bring anything specifically to the table in that regard, but I also don't know. I just don't know. And Fran's not going to tip his hat, I don't think, one way or the other to that. But it's going to be intriguing. Certainly Matt Gatens, with his ability to shoot the ball, you'd have to think that he might grow this relationship with Tony Perkins. Maybe he already has. Guys like Tony Perkins, Aaron Eulis, who have struggled at times from 3. I think that's a great time for Matt Gatens, who was an exceptional shooter, to step in and help those backcourt guards. And Dasonte Bowen's a freshman. So some of those guys are going to have to make threes. I mean, there's no question. You can't have, especially if Eulis and Perkins end up being your 2 starters in the backcourt, one of those guys has to be reliable from 3. I really believe that to be the case. So, and that we'll get to that more in a second, but how will Eldridge and Gatens, how will they fit in? I think they will fit in. I think they have fit in, but the proof will be in the pudding. How about number 3? What will we get from the freshman? Dasonte Bowen, a lot of hype around him, thought to be a scoring guard, certainly more than an Aaron Eulis when he came out of Chicago. Bowen with some good size at 6'1", certainly still has a freshman's body. But what will they get out of him? Will Amarian Nimmers, the walk-on from the Quad Cities, will he factor in? Certainly with injuries, I would expect him to have a shot. His athleticism, he had opportunities to play on scholarship at some smaller schools. Could he contribute? And then the big question mark is Josh Dix. He's coming off a gruesome leg injury during his senior year of high school. But Fran McCaffery, we're going to talk to him about Dix here in a little bit, but sounds like he's recovered well and he'll be ready to play conceivably in the exhibition game. We'll see how he looks and how many minutes he logs. But freshman production, always a storyline to follow. Number 2, this is kind of a 2-parter, number 2, if you will. Guard and center. Those are kind of my big question marks. Everybody wants to talk about center. Iowa swinging and missing in the portal. They went after guys like Fardaws Amac. They went after a guy that ended up transferring to Ole Miss, kid from Louisiana Lafayette. And they bring Josh Ogundele back out of the portal, who at one time announced he was leaving. But Ogundele and Mulvey, those 2 guys, those are the 2 that one of those guys has to emerge, I would think. Now, Philip Rebrache, it sounds like he's had an excellent offseason, but he does not give you the size that I think you need, although they beat Zach Edey and Purdue largely without a 7-footer, although Mulvey and Ogundele both got minutes last year in that Big Ten tournament championship. I think they need one of those guys to emerge because there are still solid big men. Less big men, the conference is less deep at the 5 position, I think, than in past seasons. But you're looking at guys like Zed Key, you look at Zach Edey, Trace Jackson Davis is certainly not a 7-footer, but he's going to cause problems for, I think, undersized players. I don't know if Philip Rebrache has the athleticism without the size to be able to make it hard on Trace Jackson Davis. We'll see if Trace Jackson Davis has developed somewhat of a jump shot. But I think center is a big question mark, but guard too. Can Iowa find, I mentioned that earlier, Eulis or Perkins? Can one of those guys be consistent from 3? Or maybe Dasonte Bowen comes in and makes 3s. I'm not going to put that onus on a guy like Amarian Nimmers, who's coming in off scholarship. But one of those 3 guys, I think Perkins certainly is the guy you expect at the 2 spot. Although I think he can play the 1. I've talked about that as well. Sounds like he played the 1 in Iowa's secret scrimmage. But those will be storylines, center and guard development. And of course, number 1, who's Iowa's next All-American? It seems like every year, whether we're talking Jared Utoff, Luka Garza, or most recently Keegan Murray, Iowa, give credit to Fran McCaffery. He develops somebody who takes a huge leap onto the national stage. And now we're seeing the results with Keegan Murray in Sacramento, tearing it up. Luka Garza's got a chance to earn his spot with the Minnesota Timberwolves. He'll also be playing basketball down here in Des Moines at with the Iowa Wolves. But will it be Chris Murray? Could it be Patrick McCaffrey? I mentioned Tony Perkins. A lot of hype around him as being kind of a dark horse candidate for being one of the best 2 guards in the Big Ten. I still think, I mentioned this a couple seconds ago, I still think that Tony Perkins could end up being a point guard in the league someday. You may laugh at that, but I look at his size and his ability to attack the rim, if he can develop a jump shot, can Tony Perkins rein in the ball handling, improve his skills with the ball, and again, make three-pointers. So those are going to be the two things in his development. But I think he's got the body. I think he's got the size to be a really good one in the league someday. But there's still development that has to be had. So maybe it's him. Maybe it's Perkins. Maybe it's McCaffrey. Maybe it's Chris Murray. Those would be certainly your top three candidates, I would think, to make a leap. You're going to have senior leadership from guys like Philip Brada, Connor McCaffrey. What step will Peyton Sandfort take? It sounds like he's grown a bit. All great storylines, but those are my top 5 storylines. But let's hear from the head man himself. Fran McCaffery, Iowa men's basketball head coach Fran McCaffery, joins the show for an exclusive sit-down as we preview the upcoming season in Hawkeye Hoops. We'll be back with Fran McCaffery after this. You may have heard of the real-life Hawkeye man cave known as Kinnick Under the Kitchen. Well, after lots of hard work, there's not much space left to paint. But the walls are exploding out for public consumption. Under the Kitchen is proud to announce that you can now purchase exclusive prints of some of your favorite Hawkeye legends, including wrestling great Spencer Lee, football players Arlen Bruce, Riley Moss, and Tavian Banks, plus an all-in-one Murray family legacy print featuring Keegan, Chris, and Kenyon Murray himself. Signed and unsigned prints are available, making the perfect collectible or gift for any Hawkeye enthusiast. For more information on purchasing one of these outstanding Hawkeye prints, visit Under the Kitchen on Facebook. That's Under the Kitchen on Facebook. Pleased to be joined now by the one and only Coach Fran McCaffery as we head into another exciting start to the Iowa men's basketball season. And Coach, I know you're busy. You're in the midst of getting ready for an exciting non-conference schedule, so appreciate you taking the time this morning.
Sure thing. Good to be with you.
Fran, I know you've covered a lot of these topics at Big Ten Media Days and certainly at Iowa Media Day. You've talked about NIL at length, but I want to start there and then we can get into the roster and the schedule. You've made it clear how you feel on NIL. I think I can speak for you in saying that you want players to be able to benefit off their name, image, and likeness, but the way it's currently constructed, there are some damaging effects to various parties involved with this. And there have been reports out there that recruits that have went other places have been offered a large sum of money to go to said places. And of course, that's not supposed to be a recruiting incentive. Just provide your thoughts on the current state of NIL and where is Iowa? Do you feel like Iowa is up to speed with the general population in the NCAA?
What Iowa is doing is what we're supposed to be doing, and that's abiding by NCAA rules. NIL is a great thing. It should have happened a long time ago. In conjunction with the transfer portal, it became pay for play. And that's not what it's supposed to be, but it is at some places. So, it's difficult when you're trying to abide by the rules and then you have folks that are just buying talent. We warned everybody that's what's going to happen. If you declare every athlete that plays college basketball a free agent, that's what they are. They're free agents. It was incredibly foolish and short-sighted, but they didn't want to listen. And, and you could argue that they have a mess. And unfortunately, I think people have a negative feeling towards NIL, which is unfair. The players that play Division I men's college basketball are part of a multi-billion-dollar entity. They were the only people that weren't getting any money out of that. You say, well, they were getting a scholarship. They were getting tuition, room and board, books and fees. It's an opportunity, and it's what we've always done. That's true. But it wasn't a multi-billion-dollar entity in those days. It is now. And everyone else is making money. Like when I first got into this, we were making peanuts, and athletic directors were making peanuts. So, okay, kids get a scholarship. Everybody's happy. I was not complaining with what I was being paid. I was thrilled to be coaching, thrilled to be employed by an institution and get to come to work every day and work with young people to help them reach their goals and be involved in a game of basketball. That's what we all wanted. But as the dollars got to the point where not only is it a multi-billion-dollar entity, the men's basketball tournament, our TV package is $1 billion a year entity. We don't get all of that, obviously. So it was, I think, obvious to everybody that, okay, the players have to factor into this equation. And that was really great to see that the NCAA was open to that. They sat down, they looked, now they fought it because they wanted to keep the rules the way they were, because the model is such that that money would pay for all the non-revenue sports. And how and where are you going to get the money to pay for those sports if there's not as much left? So they still haven't gone to a revenue sharing program of any kind. You're just allowed to profit from your name, image, and likeness. And the negative there is now there's an expectation that if I go into the portal or if I'm a high-profile high school player, that I have a payday coming. And that's not what that was supposed to be. If you are going to transfer from an institution and enter the transfer portal, it was generally understood that, okay, you were dissatisfied to some degree where you were. And it gave more flexibility to the athlete to make a move. Why they would refer to that as a penalty, having to sit out a year, just baffles me. Was never a penalty. All right. Yeah, you couldn't play right away. That just made you think long and hard. Do I want to leave now? But you get your eligibility back. You can still play. You get another year of education. You get another year of basketball. I did it. It's a wonderful thing. So, you want to say that it's a mess? It kind of is, because you have some teams working with a different set of rules. And that's not what this is supposed to be. But at the end of the day, college basketball players should be getting the opportunity to make money off their name, image, and likeness. And that's what our guys are doing, and I'm thrilled for them.
Coach, should a big donor, someone who's maybe an alumni of the program or any program, be able to say privately to a high school athlete, I want to pay you $250,000 and to come to this university if it's in no way affiliated? The relationship is not, it's not a corroborated thing between the university and that donor. Is that something that you think should be able to happen?
Well, what's interesting about that, a donor, a booster, would often be referred to as a representative of the athletics interest. In the past, they couldn't even speak to a prospect. And if they were, in fact, going to step up with the kind of money that you referenced, that student athlete is supposed to have to earn that money. It shouldn't be, I get a duffel bag with $250,000 in it because I decided to come to your school.
Yeah.
He would have to, assuming the donor is wealthy, he has a business, that individual would represent that business to some degree. It should be commensurate with what you would normally pay somebody. And again, I don't know, quite frankly, Corey, if there's any rules as far as that is concerned. When you look at, do a commercial and do a few social media tweets, and we'll pay you $300,000.
Right.
That seems a little illogical. And we all know what's going on. It's pay for play. It's not what this is supposed to be.
Let's shift our attention to the coaching staff and the season upon us, Coach. One of my favorite people ever came and left to this program is Matt Gatens, and I know you probably would agree with those sentiments. Mm-hmm. And certainly, I don't know Courtney Eldridge the way you do because of your background with Courtney, but those two guys added to the staff, and of course, Billy Taylor and Coach Spur departing. What do those two guys add to this coaching staff that maybe, not saying it's better than what Billy and Kirk brought, but is different?
Well, I think you start off with some similarities. I coached Billy Taylor in college. We worked together, and I hired him 3 different times. Very close with him, with his family. Feel the same way about Courtney. I coached Courtney. We remained very close. He was on our staff for like 6 years before he was able to move up and have an opportunity to be out on the road. But similar backgrounds in the sense that they were really good players, hard workers, really smart, wanted to get into coaching, got into coaching, paid their dues, and really were tremendous. Same thing with, Kirk Spearoff. I mean, he played here, he coached at a number of different places, worked for really good people. Lute Olson, Lon Kruger, had his own success as a head coach. Now, Matt Gayton's my first captain, grew up in this town, played for us, really was instrumental in us being able to build this program because he was with us the first year. We remained somewhat competitive. And then in year 2, we won 18 games, went to the NIT, beat ranked opponents, established that we're going to be playing a certain style. And again, went away, kind of developed his craft, perfected it, and is in a great position to come back and help this program, which he loves. So, we're going to miss those two guys. They were great, Kirk and Billy, but we have two great replacements in, Courtney and Matt.
I asked Coach Gary Close, who's on a recent show with us the other day, about a natural shooter at the college or pro level, which Matt Gayton's was. Does that translate to the coaching level as far as the ability to help guys from behind the arc? And of course, Matt Gayton's had as pure of a stroke as anybody. And what Gary's response was, well, you still got to be a good teacher. How would you evaluate Matt Gayton's as a teacher?
Yeah, he's really done a great job in the short period of time he's been here working with our guys. Kirk Spearoff was always kind of our shot doctor. So if we had a guy that we wanted to maybe improve a little bit in any way, whether it be just at the free throw line or catch and shoot or off the dribble, Kirk was a guy that I thought really did a good job in that area. I trusted him. I would say, hey, take him and work with him, and he really helped some guys, and it's not something we talk about. It just happened, and that's the pride he took in his position to help young guys get better in certain areas. I think Matt will be that guy. Not saying that Courtney and Sherman couldn't teach shooting, but I think Matt's a guy that, because of his stroke, because of his success as a shooter, his knowledge and his technique, I think he has the ability to really be impactful with guys that might be struggling a little bit.
I want to talk briefly about the schedule, Coach, because there are people out there that were critical of the non-conference schedule last year, but you've been very outspoken about how you formulate your schedule based upon your team. So what about this team caused you to want to schedule Duke and Georgia Tech, Clemson, potentially TCU, Seton Hall? It's a gauntlet in the non-con this year.
It is, and the thing about it is, sometimes it's within your control, sometimes it's not. Like, for example, some years we play the Big East, the Gavitt games, the Big East Challenge. Last year we did not. This year we do. So that adds, Seton Hall on the road. You do have the opportunity to say, okay, we're going to play in an MTE. So this year it's 2 games. Last year it was 1 game. It wasn't an MTE. It was the game up at the Pentagon.
Right.
So, you're playing 20 league games. You're always going to play Iowa State. You're always going to play the ACC Challenge. I mean, so you already have 22 monsters. So now where do you go from there? Well, you're typically going to be either in an MTE or you're going to do a 1-day Power 5 game. And so you have a little bit of flexibility. Okay, we can back it off a little bit. But the thing that a lot of people that complain about scheduling don't know anything about scheduling. We have a thing called the net, and it's an empirical formula. And in the past, your RPI was based on just a few different criteria. Well, now there's way more criteria. So when you schedule a game, it can impact your net rating regardless of the quality of opponent. Now, they don't really want you playing, the bottom 50, say, of the 350 Division I teams. But depending upon, A, you have to win the game. B, by how many? What was your offensive efficiency like? And a lot of different factors will determine where you're at. So last year, even though we had a somewhat softer schedule compared to this year, our net rating was phenomenally high because we took care of business. But more importantly, you do that with the net ranking in the back of your mind. But what you're trying to do is develop your team. And that's, okay, what combinations do we like? Bring our young guys along. Get them confidence. And that's the hardest thing. You start throwing some young guys right away into tough games, and they don't get as much playing time because they're not quite as ready. They're not ready in February when you need them to be. So for us, I thought, okay, we got the Gavitt games back this year. Let's go back and do an MTE somewhere and play two really good teams, and your 20 league games, and of course Iowa State. So we were pretty much done. We had one game left to schedule, and ironically, we get a phone call, do you want to play Duke at the Garden? Well, we could easily have said no. Nobody would have ever known that we got a phone call asking us that, and we could have played somebody that we felt pretty confident that we could beat at home. But I think, when you recruit in the Big Ten and you tell guys, hey, we're going to play people, we're going to play on television, we're going to play on national TV, we're going to travel around the country. That's what you sign up for when you come to play at Iowa. You don't say no to that opportunity because you're never going to beat Duke in the Garden if you don't play them. So I think when you tell the team that, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do, they get excited about that. And I think other players will want to come knowing that we're going to schedule that way.
I think it was Wayne Gretzky, you miss all the shots you don't take.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly
so,
right.
I know Iowa fans pumped for that matchup, and not a more iconic arena in the world than Madison Square Garden. Hawkeye fans, let's talk about health and performance optimization for a moment. Our sponsor, Ascent Nutrition, offers amazing products. It's actually owned by former Iowa graduate Lance Shuttler. Now, I've decided to partner with Ascent Nutrition because of their unique approach to human health. Ascent offers an organically grown, mold and mycotoxin-free coffee. It provides a pure, clean, and rich flavor without those pesticides that most coffees are treated with. They also offer an algae oil DHA, which is used to support brain health, memory, and focus, as well as proper nervous system development in adults, children, athletes, and even pets. Now, lastly, their unique crafted wild pine pollen is used to support cardiovascular health, hormonal function, and a healthy libido. Your purchase not only supports this channel, but the business of a former Hawkeye. Visit goascentnutrition.com or click the link in the description below and use the code Hawkeyes. That's the code Hawkeyes to receive 15% off your total order from Ascent Nutrition. It's clear, Fran, you look at the numbers and just the eye test would tell you over these past two seasons that you guys have ramped it up defensively. I'm not saying there's not still improvement to be made, but have there been any philosophical changes? What's made the difference these last two seasons on the defensive end of the court?
Well, I think, we've had some depth, so that keeps fresh bodies out there a little bit more. It has been a focus, especially in the rebounding area, because a lot of times when you look at shooting percentages, it's not that they made the first shot, it's that they got an offensive rebound and laid it back in. Well, there's 50%, and plus they scored. And now you have to run your break against a team that has a defense back as opposed to a team that doesn't have their defense back. We're always going to be playing fast-paced. We're going to get it and go. So that means there's going to be a higher possession game. You can grind and you can control the ball and have fewer possessions and try to hold a team into the low 40s or the high 30s% from two. And your defensive numbers are going to look a lot better. But when you're scoring, where you're trying to score 90, like we do, there's going to be more opportunities to be on defense. and you're also going to be in transition, which is the cause for fatigue at times. You might get a little sloppy. So the critical thing is to be able to make sure you understand that. And then also, as I said at the very beginning of this answer, is to have fresh bodies out there so that they're sprinting up and down the floor both ways.
Last question, Fran, and then I want to finish off with personnel. How do you get the students more involved? I mean, there's no question Carver's a special place. I know, there's been speculation that, if you move the students to a different place, I know that's easier said than done. But how many conversations have been had behind the scenes about maybe trying to get the students more involved in different ways?
There has been a phenomenal number of attempts to make that happen. We have, the Hawk's Nest and various student organizations, and those guys are awesome. The ticket prices are phenomenally reasonable. I'm always excited with the students that come. Should there be more? Could there be more? Yeah, probably. It has been more difficult. Forget about students, for anybody. Okay. When you don't always play at the same times and you don't always play on the same days. I mean, a lot of people over the years have gotten into, okay, we play Thursday, Saturday, we play Tuesday, Saturday, we play Tuesday or Wednesday, Saturday. We play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday at different times. All right. So that's a little bit of a challenge. It's more of a challenge for our fan base that typically come from the Quad Cities or north of Cedar Rapids, Waterloo, Des Moines. They're not coming on a Tuesday night at 8:20 from Des Moines, but the students are here. So I think we sometimes point to them and say, well, you need to be the ones that come because you don't have that far to go. And the thing that I think is interesting, I think our students really follow and support this team. They don't always go to the games, but they're watching. What could we do? Yeah, you can move the students down closer. You could give them free tickets. But I mean, with what the ticket cost, and there's value to that ticket, it's so low compared to the number of games and opportunities and the quality of teams that we're playing. I don't think that is a huge impediment. I think eventually we'll see students closer to the court. When the Carver renovation took place about 10 years ago, those people that invested money to make that renovation happen were promised seats down close to the floor. They stepped up and made large donations, so they should be able to sit where they told they were going to sit. So now if you're going to change that, clearly there has to be conversation. Maybe on one side, side behind the benches, and what are you talking about, 800 to 1,000 seats, the first 800 to 1,000 students that show up, they get to sit right there. You're right on TV, cameras pointing right at you. I'd probably like to see that. I think across the board, there are some places where you see large crowds, but I think crowds across the country are getting smaller. Why is that? Well, because every game's on national TV. Every game is professionally broadcast. Everybody that you and I know has a big screen. But I think the other thing was during the pandemic, the amount of people that watched our games that weren't allowed in the building was astronomical.
Right.
Everybody watched that team play. Everybody wanted to watch Luka and Joe Wieskamp and that team. It was so good. I think we made it easy for people to watch games on TV because we didn't let them come that year. So you have a lot of factors involved here. But I will tell you that our administration, our marketing folks are being proactive in providing a better environment at the games, even considering the impediment impediments that I talked about earlier, that, the timing of the games, when they are, weekday games are hard for the people in the state of Iowa. So, we will continue to look at the students and say, hey, we need you guys there. Let's face it. I mean, you've been there a number of times. I mean, it's dramatically better when they're engaged the way that they are most of the time. And it makes a big difference to us, makes a difference to the players, and we appreciate them.
Absolutely. I know we're running out of time here, Fran, but I wanted to finish off by, I'd be remiss if I didn't just ask you about personnel, and you've been asked this a million times, but how deep can you go? And I guess we can start with the backcourt and then front court. Is Josh Dix going to be ready? Full speed game one? How much does Asante Bowen give you? And then, of course, where's the development with Aaron and Tony at the two?
Yeah, this team, we have 11 on scholarship. We have 4 walk-ons. We have 15 guys on the team. I feel very comfortable going pretty deep with this team. Your first question was, about Josh and DeSante. Josh looks great, playing great. Same with DeSante. I think there was more question about Josh because he had a compound fracture. DeSante came in healthy, thankfully. Neither of those guys, in my estimation, have played like freshmen, which is always something that we never know. I would have suspected that. Or I should say I would have expected that, knowing their personalities, knowing the confidence they have in themselves, but they've been terrific. Tony and Aaron are both juniors now. I mean, sophomore eligible, but juniors, doing what you would have expected. It's great to see Aaron healthy again. He was banged up towards the end of the year. Tony, of course, was one of the best players in our league last year. After we moved him into the starting lineup, and he's playing with great confidence. So those guys are really solid, and they're going to be right in the middle of it. And we have other guys that can play in the backcourt, both Connor and Peyton. And both of those guys will also swing to the front court. They give us versatility there. But both of those guys are playing at a very high level. Really impressed with Peyton Sanford, his game, his toughness, his intellect, his tenacity, and he's a shot maker. I think you're seeing a different Connor. We're seeing a different Connor this year because it's the first time he hasn't played baseball, and his game is tight. He's in great basketball shape. Coming off hip surgeries before, and really didn't get going until about the midway through the season, but he was clearly a critical part of our championship run. And then you got, Patrick, double-figure scorer, Chris Murray. I mean, those two guys playing at a very high level. Both of those guys are in their 4th year out of high school. Again, veteran guys, shot makers, versatile, play well together. They both can dribble, pass, and shoot. They both share the ball. And then you have, the two big fellows in the post. I haven't mentioned Rebracha. I'll get to him in a minute. But you got Riley and Josh. We need to get some quality minutes out of those guys. They've been good. They've been a little up and down, but they're both working really hard. And the last guy, Rebracha, you're going to see a completely different Philip. He was great last year. We don't win the championship without him. But he made a lot of sacrifices with his game. He's got way more offense there, and I've been encouraging him to take advantage of it. He's been way more aggressive, shooting the ball, scoring the ball, driving the ball. Defensively, he's as good as any post player in the league. Defending ball screen action, I mean, he's as good as it gets, and he's tough and physical. I'm really excited for him now in year 2 in our program.
And this is kind of a rhetorical question, but how much does Ogundele and Mulvey, their development impact where you play, Philip? Because I'm assuming you'd like to get him in at the 4 because the guy can stretch the floor a bit more than he showed last year.
He can. I think Josh and Riley have both proven that they can play. The question will be, is it 3 minutes at a time? Can they play 8 to 10 minutes? Both from a conditioning standpoint, from an execution standpoint, so they're not in foul trouble. But those guys, I feel confident, can go in the game and be productive.
Peyton Sanford, a true 6'8" now? It's the rumor on the street.
He's close. If he's not, he's right. He's 6'7.5", but he attacks the glass. He brings it down. He makes threes. He never stops moving. He's really, really hard to guard. And, anytime you have a good offensive player, that's what we try to get them to understand. Just be hard to guard because you're going to be marked. You just can't stand there and expect that you're going to be able to get 20. You got a back cut, curl cut, fade, shot fake, driving kick, make a play for somebody else, get an offensive rebound putback, get an offensive rebound kick out. And he impacts the game that way. And that's what makes him special.
Iowa basketball head coach Fran McCaffery. Fran, I know you're, again, busy. You were just days away from the start of the season. Much appreciated you're taking the time today, and we look forward to a packed non-conference schedule and days.
Appreciate it, Corey.
Once again, want to thank Fran McCaffery for being a part of this show. Should be another great year. Looking forward to it all season long. And, of course, former Iowa assistant coach Gary Close joining us for live post-game shows following the men's basketball games. Stay tuned, folks, right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm, all season long coverage of Hawkeye Hoops.